Hi everyone, my name is Maria. I'm going to be doing an Ask Me Anything shortly right here on the Schulich Leader Network Facebook group. I'm just going to wait a moment or two for people to join in. And yeah, so just hang tight for 2 or 3 minutes and then I will get started. And in the meantime, if you're here chilling, if you have any questions that you're super eager to ask, type them down in the comments and then I'll get a good idea of what I'm going to be talking about. All right, so I guess I will get started. As I mentioned, my name is Maria Park. I am a 2016 Schulich Leader at the University of Ottawa. I completed my degree in biomedical science there this spring, and yeah, so that's a little bit about my background, but let's go even farther into kind of how I got to that position. So I'm originally from Corner Brook, Newfoundland. Anyone from Newfoundland will recognize that as a big city gal. Corner Brook is one of the second biggest place or city in the first biggest city outside of the Avalon in Newfoundland. But in all intents and purposes, for the rest of Canada, it's a pretty small town. And growing up in this small town, I was always really passionate and really involved in 2 different things. One of those things, as you may have guessed, was science and academics. I always really enjoyed school. I was always involved in, whether it was a Let's Talk Science competition or any other academic, math contest. And then I was always really eager and interested in science, which led me to pursue my degree in biomedical sciences this last 4 years at UOttawa. But the other thing that I was really passionate about was the arts. I've been dancing and singing and acting, mainly dancing, since I was a child. I taught dance all throughout middle school and high school at my local dance studio. I actually started my own nonprofit performance project called Anna Appearances, where I dress up as Princess Anna from the movie Frozen and go to children's parties. And I also have worked with for the past 4 years a musical theater company that I was involved with as a kid, where we do musical theater camps throughout rural Ontario and in my hometown of Newfoundland. So one of the things that this Ask Me Anything was going to be about was involvement in the arts. And I just want to say, and if there's any further questions about that, great. But I think that involvement in the arts and my continued involvement in the arts was something that led me to my career in this current discipline, and ultimately really helped me applying to medical school as well, because I'm sure that is also something that people might want to ask about. So yeah, in completing my degree last 4 years, I discovered and sort of confirmed my interest from high school that I wanted to pursue medicine. So I have applied to medical school in 2 different cycles. I applied in the 2018-2019 cycle and then the 2019-2020 cycle to medical schools. And this year I am starting, or in a couple weeks now, I am starting medical school at the University of Ottawa. So that was definitely a very lengthy process applying to medical school. And if anyone has any questions about that there, feel free to ask me. I just realized that I can't see the comments. As you can tell, I am not one of the technology SHULIC leaders. I am a biology SHULIC leader that's not good with technology. So I'm just going to make sure I can bring up the comments, or see them at least, so that way if anyone has any questions, they can. Till then, I'll just be rambling. Yeah, okay, great, cool. Now I can see my own live stream. Great. So yeah, I know that a lot of SHULIC leaders are also interested in medicine, just like I was as an incoming SHULIC. And first of all, I want to say that we're really lucky in the SHULIC Leader Network that there are so many SHULIC leaders that have also pursued medicine. So I know that throughout my time personally at UOttawa, I got to know Elena Sorghini, who's now at Western for medicine, and Frank Battaglia, who just finished UOttawa, his 4 years at UOttawa Med. And they were really helpful in applying to things. I even practiced a couple times with Alana, or practice interview questions, sorry. So that would be, I guess, the first thing I would say if you're applying to medical school is to ask people who have gone through it for advice. I'm just one person in this SHULIC Leader Network who has gone through it, but there are so many leaders with so many different stories and so many different tips and tricks that they can help you out with in your application. So that is one thing that I would suggest. And it doesn't need to be someone in the SHULIC Leader Network. I would just make sure whoever you know in your life, if you know anyone either at university or in your hometown who's gone through the process before, I found it really helpful. I know, especially for me, I applied in Newfoundland to Memorial University, and I also applied to Ontario universities through OMSAS. And I kind of knew the ropes of Memorial University because I knew a lot of friends from people from Newfoundland who had gone through it, but I was absolutely in the dark when it came to OMSAS. So that guidance was really key. Yeah, I'm just going to pause while I think of some more tips. And I'm going to edit the caption of the AMA. Oh, no, next. Oh, okay. Okay, never mind. I was going to edit the caption. There we go. There we go. AMA. Medical school application. Cool. So yeah, that is one piece of advice that I would give is make sure that you seek advice, because a lot of the time there can be a really unhealthy culture surrounding medical school applications that I really don't like, where people are very competitive about things and very much like, oh, I've got to do my best and I can't, I've got to be better than them, I've got to be better than this. But really, I'd like to think about it that we're all in this together. And you should, one of the reasons hopefully that you're deciding to pursue medicine is because you want to help people. So I think that in order to get the best results and to just keep your morals and be a good person is to help people. So if you reach out to someone and they don't help you, that's not the right decision on their part. So don't be scared to ask for help in applying. The other thing I would say, based on my personal experience, I'm sure you can look online and get lots of tips on how to write your application or when to study for the MCAT and stuff like that. But if you have those questions, you could ask me just how I did it. But one of the things that I would also say to people is don't be afraid to wait for what you want. I had a really interesting decision to make when I applied the first time to medical school. So I guess I'll tell that story. So I applied to, when I was in my third year of university, of my undergrad, I applied to 3 different medical schools. I applied to the University of Ottawa, I applied to Queen's University, and I applied to McMaster University. Just more so out of a shot in the dark. Let's see what happens. I know I'm interested in medicine, so I doubt I'll get in this year, but let's see what will happen in case I do get in, or what feedback I could get for my application for next year when I'm very, very serious about wanting to pursue it after my undergraduate degree. So I applied, didn't really think much of it, and then I ended up getting an interview at McMaster, which was great and such a good experience interviewing. I think that going through that interview, and I didn't do a lot of preparation for the interview because you will see why in the next part of the story, but any interview, even if you don't get accepted to medical school after your first interview, the interview process is probably the best preparation you can get for the whole application process of applying to medical school. After I did that interview and the interview prep, I found myself better able to answer questions on the Casper better. I found myself able to phrase sort of things on my autobiographical sketch, on applications, or in essays better, because I was kind of in the mindset of, okay, what do they want? What part of my story do they want to see? So the interview was very, very helpful. So if you don't get in your first try, and you get an interview your first try, then you will by far definitely be way more prepared for even writing your application the next round. But I interviewed at McMaster, and I did my research on the school, and watched the video, the welcome video that they had, and saw the campus, and looked into their program and talked to the students that they had there at the interview. And then I found myself a little bit before the interview, but mostly after the interview, realizing that even though it confirmed my beliefs that I for sure wanted to pursue medicine, I didn't necessarily think that the environment and the structure of that program would fit me very well. So there's a couple of personal reasons for that. Some of it had to do with the fact that I was in a really great research lab, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to perhaps pursue an MD PhD and be more focused on research in a journey to medical school. So I kind of wanted to do my honors thesis there. Some parts of it were the fact that their curriculum or their program is 3 years long, and it's really based in self-learning, I've heard, and I don't do well when super rushed like that. I kind of wanted a 4-year program to sort of thin things out. So I was kind of caught in this position. Was like, okay, I don't think that this medical school is going to be a great fit for me, but all I want to do is pursue medicine, and everyone knows that you're super lucky to even get accepted to a school. And I've never heard of anyone decline a school and reapply before in my life. But I made a huge pros and cons list. I talked it out with everyone in my life, and everyone I talked to about, hey,
if I get accepted, I might decline this. At first, before I explained myself, they were like, what? But then immediately after I explained the reasons why, they said, no, that makes perfect sense. That is what I would do. So that was a very difficult decision, but I ended up getting accepted off the wait list and then declining my acceptance and then reapplying to medical school the next year. It was a decision I could only make. First of all, I just want to acknowledge this decision is a decision I could only make because of a lot of privilege that I have. I was privileged enough that I could financially afford to take another year and of school and pay for another year of school and living in Ottawa and finish my degree. I could pay for doing the applications again for medical school, but ultimately I truly to this day don't regret it at all. I don't think even though it would have put me in a career path that I was interested in, I don't think that environment would have been beneficial for me. And I just don't think that I was ready to go to medical school after 3 years of university. I really think that my fourth year, for me personally, was a good year to really solidify why I want to follow this career path. With all that being said, firstly, no hard feelings towards McMaster University. One of my really good friends and lab mates is there for medical school right now, and she loves it because that fits her learning style. It just doesn't fit mine. So whatever fits your learning style, I would suggest to go for. But ultimately, I wanted to tell that story just because I know I felt very rushed when I was an undergrad and trying to figure out not just for medical school applications, but for anything, like sort of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to and getting involved in getting on track to get this position and go do this or get accepted to this program. It just sometimes even though yes, it's great to get started on things early and get as much experience as you can, sometimes it's worth it to sort of take a step back and not rush yourself. Ultimately, it's not just the experience, but it's how and what the experience could be to anyone, but it's also how you can react to that experience. So I think that basically what I learned from that is to know yourself and don't necessarily jump for something just because you think it's the natural right thing to do. Take your time. You've got I've still got a long path ahead of me, and you'll eventually get there. So yeah, I don't think there's any questions right now, but yeah, so I will keep rambling. So on that note, one of the reasons why I thought that that program would have been a good fit for me was because with the sort of intense 3 years and no shorter summers and stuff, I knew that would mean less downtime in the summer, sort of as a break for my mental health. And for me, that has been a huge journey that I've had to go through university, or through my undergrad. Sorry, I keep saying university as if but I'm still going to university. It just hasn't hit me yet that I start school in 2 weeks. But anyways, during my undergrad degree, so I have had anxiety my whole life, and I have been on medication since I was about high school. But I going to starting my undergrad degree, especially in a really intense programs such as biomedical science was really difficult. And while I did well with my grades and I had friends, sometimes, and I also had coping mechanisms that I developed throughout high school and throughout the rest of my life to sort of go through things. There are also times that my mental health would really deteriorate and get to a really bad spot. So I guess what I would say about that is, if you're just because you have a strategy that worked for you and your mental health that worked for you once and it worked great, doesn't mean that it's always going to work. And that was a huge learning process for me. Just because a strategy for just sort of calming down and forgetting things at the end of the day works for you doesn't mean that it's going to work in 3 years. Situations change, and I found for me, I really needed to develop a strong system of how I am aware of what state my mental health is in, and so that I can cope when things get stressful. I would say that is really important to always be checking in on, and not just say like, oh yeah, I've mastered mental health, I've got this. It's always a learning process, just like everything. All right, let's see if there are any other questions. No questions. That's okay. You don't need to ask me anything. I'll just keep babbling. But if you have a question, please comment it. I will answer it right away, and get off my little monologue here. So I spoke a little bit about medical school applications. I spoke a little bit about mental health. I spoke a little bit about my involvement in the arts. But now I guess I'm going to sort of link how all the three connect for me. So for me, throughout university, my involvement in the arts has always been such a huge way to relax and be distracted by all the stresses of life throughout university. So I would dance and choreograph with the UOttawa Dance Club, and have 2 classes a week, and that would always really calm me down and get a little bit of exercise and do things and to get to talk to different people and do something different than the pipette all day, or study all day. And I think that overall, my involvement in the arts is something that sort of set me apart in my medical school applications. It was it's great to do activities like volunteering in a hospital or a medical clinic in preparation for applying to medical school, because not only is it a good volunteer experience that people like on their resume, but it's a really great way to see if you like working in that kind of environment. But for me, my entire a lot of my application was shows I've done, or camps I've choreographed for, and it was very odd for a lot of people, but ultimately it made me stand out. And it's sort of been weird being so heavily involved in working in the arts community while simultaneously studying in science, because I kind of feel like an outsider in both. Whenever I am working at Lock and Keynote Productions, which is the musical theater company I work for, I always feel, or I used to really feel very underqualified and under sort of like an outsider to this world. A lot of my colleagues and coworkers would they would go to musical theater school and are professionally trained in this. And while I definitely had great training when I was younger, I obviously didn't go to school for it. So I sort of felt like an outsider there. And then I also felt like an outsider in the science community, because everyone else was sort of mostly just in science, or not just into science, but had their own passions, but science was sort of their main involvement. But here I was, I would leave my research lab or a research position in the lab for 2 weeks every summer and go choreograph a musical in Newfoundland. So everyone found that a little bit odd. But ultimately, I think that even though I don't think that being a scientist makes me any less of a performer or artist, and I don't think that being an artist makes me any less of a scientist. In fact, I think it I think that when science and the arts are intertwined, you get some of the most interesting and the most true to humanity experiences in life. So I think that everyone, your passion may not be the arts. If it is, we should be friends, science and arts. But regardless of if you have a passion outside of science, don't be afraid to really stay involved. Don't think that you have to give it up for your sort of trajectory in science. Yes, obviously during your undergrad it's easy to keep things up as an extracurricular activity, a bunch of rain just fell from my balcony. As an extracurricular activity, but for me it's also a job that I'm still working with that company, and that I plan on keeping as long as I can. And you can find a career that gives you both things. I've found that, and I'm still searching on how to even integrate that even more going into my medical degree. I'm looking at doing an elective program at UOttawa called Medicine in the Humanities, that looks sort of at that intersection of medicine and the humanities. But there's lots of interesting ways you can blend your passions together, and don't feel guilty taking time for one, don't feel guilty that taking time for one is making you less great at the other, because ultimately that experience can help you in that. So yeah, that's that. So no questions, that's okay. If honestly on a Sunday I wouldn't be typing out questions in an AMA. I took a nap right before this. But if you have any questions, medical school applications, mental health and wellness, involvement in the arts, anything else, it's Ask Me Anything. You can ask anything you want. I will chat about it. And don't feel like you don't feel bad if I'm in the middle of talking about something. I will stop for a question. I'd love a question, guys. All right, I'm just gonna pull up some of the prompt questions that Kinga sent to me. So I guess I've talked a lot about my experience leading up to where I am now, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what my ideal career path would look like. So as I mentioned, I'm starting medical school at the University of Ottawa in a couple weeks, and I'm very excited. I've been wanting to go to medical school and be a doctor for a long time, so dreams coming true. But my ideal career path, I think, would, as I alluded to before, be something that really mixes my passions together. So I've been teaching children in one capacity or another since I was a child, since I was in middle school. So I've taught dance of all kinds to children of all ages since I was 14, and I've also done a lot of tutoring, and also through ANA appearances. I've done a lot of community events with children, a lot of story times at the library with children, and a lot of birthday parties with children. And I really like working with children. So right now I'm looking into pediatrics because I I just love kids. I'm one of those suckers that just loves kids. And I would love to sort of mix that energy and drive that I get when I work with kids into a practice of medicine. So that's something I'm looking forward to. But I also want to keep my mind open going into this experience, because I know that you never really know until you're hands-on and really experienced it. So definitely, if I had to choose, if I had to choose today, then that's what I would choose. But I want to keep an open mind going into the experience. But also, I would like to, in a future career, I'd like to stay involved in whatever arts community there is in wherever I end up. So I'm a really big advocate for bringing arts to rural communities where people might not have as many opportunities as in larger urban centers. That is sort of the motto of the musical theater company I work for, and it's what gave me the experience of being involved in musical theater at such a young age. So I would love to sort of, in my downtime of work, also stay involved through teaching arts of any kind, probably dance, love dance. Through teaching the arts of any kind. So if there's any Schulich leaders that have any experience in that, in sort of balancing a career with a side hustle in the arts, let me know. I feel like that's a really niche thing to ask, but yeah, if anyone does, let me know. I would love to ask you anything. All right. Let's see. I guess I've alluded to it a couple times, but I guess I can also talk about research involvement for people that are applying to medical school. A lot of people think that in order to apply to medical school, you have to have experience in research. You don't. You definitely don't. You can, as long as you, obviously they want to see in your involvement and your passion for the science side of medicine somehow, but really it's all about being true to yourself. I am a big advocate for do not do anything just because you think it would look good on your resume. That I think is so counter to what a resume should be for. A resume should be for looking at what people are passionate, seeing what people are passionate about, seeing what natural inklings of skills people have or what experiences people have. And yes, don't get me wrong, you still need to have a lot to show on a resume for applying to things like medical school or internships or graduate programs, but I think that you should fill them with things that you're passionate about, and not just something that you think looks good. So for me, one of the things that I was passionate about and really interested in was getting involved in research. And I was really lucky at the University of Ottawa. They have a program called the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program, or UOttawa, where it basically gives students and the PI a little scholarship to sort of kickstart and get their foot in the door to research over the fall and winter semesters, and you present a poster at the end. So that was great for me. I went to the lab a couple hours a week and did that project, and then it led to me working there for 2 summers, volunteering during my 3rd year, and then ultimately doing my honors thesis there this past year. And I think that it was great. It was a great program to get started with. UOttawa because I came from somewhere that had not no research. There is Grenfell campus in Corner Brook where there is lots of great research going on, but there wasn't really a lot of biomedical research and not a lot of opportunities for high school students to become involved in research in my hometown. Unlike I know in some of the bigger cities, There are sort of internship programs where high school students can become involved in laboratory research here and do science fairs and stuff. That was not a thing where I was from. So I would say if you're in a similar situation like that, check out your university for programs like UOttawa, like I talked about, because they're a great way to get your foot in the door, and it's never too late to get involved. I always said when I was applying to that position, what I lack in experience, I will make up in enthusiasm and hard work. And I think that's sort of my life motto for getting through things. But it's definitely the case if you're applying to your first research position. So yeah, don't be scared, is what I would say. And yeah, I think that in terms of, I guess, how that research position relates to what I'm doing now, I absolutely loved the research I was doing. I worked with the Ardolino lab at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute in the Cancer Therapeutics program at UOttawa. And I worked on two different projects. One was looking at PD-L1 signaling induced by oncolytic viruses, and one was looking at the role of LAG3 on natural killer cells. So LAG3 is a protein, and sort of how that can relate to different cancer immunotherapies. And that experience was super great. I absolutely loved it, but ultimately ultimately it was really informative in sort of what I wanted to do moving forward as well. I love research. I love being in the lab, but I don't necessarily want to be in the lab, 300 days a year, and with that, and in the academic setting. And while, there are lots of ways to be involved in research not in an academic setting, I knew that a master's and a PhD was not, or for me at this time, maybe in a couple of years after I finish this program, I will have a change of heart. You never know where life's gonna bring you. I didn't think it was necessarily for me. I wanted more not interaction with humans, because my friends in the lab would be very insulted by that I wanted more interaction with humans, because my lab mates are super great, and I also loved learning from and talking to all of the other profs that I worked with. But ultimately I wanted to be more on the primary care and more of the on the human side of medicine. I loved the primary or the basic research side. I appreciate it so much, and I think the science is so interesting, but that was just what I found for me. And for a long time, like I mentioned before when I was talking about my dilemma and decision that I made in my last application cycle to pursue my honors, to see if maybe I do want to do a master's, maybe I do want to go into research in cancer immunology. I ultimately, after that experience, I realized that it wasn't for me right now. And things can change. I thought it was for me, might have been for me a year ago. It's not for me now. And don't be afraid if your life path changes, because it definitely has for me a lot, and lots of ups and downs. All right, so I'm got a couple minutes left of this AMA. If anyone has any questions, I'm just gonna refresh. Maybe I just can't see questions. No, I'm just not popular. That's fine. I will answer them. Yeah, I'll answer them. And yeah, so I will try and think of something concluding to say if no one answers a question or no one asks a question. But if they do, I'll answer that. It doesn't need to be a quick question. I can go over. It's just this is a long. I've done a lot of theater and I've done monologues before, but this might be the longest monologue of my life, or the longest improvised monologue of my life. Oh my. So I guess in conclusion, I talked about a couple things today. I talked about applying to medical school and my journey on that. And so I guess the takeaways from that I'm hoping that if any Schulich leader is watching this, thinking that maybe they'd like to apply to medical school, or maybe they're in the process of applying for this next upcoming cycle, is firstly, let your passions show no matter what they are on your application. You may think that, oh, okay, no one, it's sort of silly that, I do run all these races and do these running and run all the time, but, that shows something about you. If you love to run and you're participating in that, tell them that. Show them. For me, in an interview once, they asked, I won't tell the school and I won't give you the exact phrasing because there's a bit more to the question than this because of the confidentiality. But once I was asked something along the lines of, what's something different about you that we might not know about you? And I told them how I once won a wing eating competition at our local winter carnival and ate a pound of wings in 2 minutes and 19 seconds against 2 older men, and at 15 years old. And you know what? The interviewers died of laughter, and I think that, and I got into that school. Well, that was one of the schools that I got into. So never be afraid to show your passions, whether it's running or wing eating, or whatever. Applying to medical school can be sort of a dehumanizing process with all of the applications and the tests and the MCAT and the Casper and blah, 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 and the essays. But ultimately, you're trying to show them you, and they want to see you. So show yourself off and be confident with yourself. I would also say in that, don't be scared to make risky decisions, and don't be scared to make things that don't seem right and don't seem like other people necessarily agree with it. For me, when I had that situation with McMaster, and I was unsure if I wanted to go or not, I sat there and thought, if in a year or in 5 years or in 10 years, will I regret this? And then whenever I thought about other people saying things about it, I was like, oh, I felt bad. But then when I thought about just myself and me living my life, I didn't think I would regret it. So I knew 100%, or not 100%, a soul level, I knew 90% deep down that this was what I should do. So, your career isn't a race. Make sure that you are finding and taking the opportunities that aren't just, good for and seem great, but are actually good for you. And then along with that, I also talked about your mental health. Make sure that you take the time again to ongoingly check in with yourself and make sure you're not just relying on strategies that worked for you once in terms of coping with things but aren't working for you now. It's a journey, mental health is a journey, not just crossing the finish line and checking the box on. I did it. Mental health done. And if any Schulich leader ever wants to geek out about musical theater or dance or anything, let me know. That's my summary of what I talked about being involved with the arts. and you can be a scientist and an artist. So yeah, that is the end of my Ask Me Anything, or as this has been my Maria rambles about 3 topics that she chose for 45 minutes. I hope that you enjoyed this, for those of you that are watching, and even if you're not watching this live and you're watching this later, if you have any questions at all about any of the things that I talked about, or anything else, feel free to message me on Facebook here. You just click on me and message me. And I would be more than happy to talk and help in any way I can, whether that's with a medical school application or any art involvement or project, or just someone to chat to. I'm here to help. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I'm gonna go. See you.